I'll tell you, it feels like everybody's leaning towards Justin Fields, and a lot of people love him, and I think they lean towards accumulating picks. Me, on the other hand, I'm more so on taking the quarterback at number one. Seeing where we're at the number 9, I think we still have great value at that number 9 pick. You either select a really good player there, or just how the draft kind of falls to that point that we can possibly move that pick and acquire more additional picks, but also get your quarterback at the top.
Well, that's interesting, because Corey and me have been going at it. We've been going 12 rounds for a few months now, and I'm team draft Caleb, and he's team keep Justin Fields. And we've gotten pretty heated at each other here a few times, and Corey's been bullying me, trying to get me to flip-flop, and a few times he's succeeded, trying to scare me into keeping Fields. But from your standpoint, do you want to elaborate why you feel that they should draft Caleb Williams and move on from Justin Fields, somebody that is very loved here in this city?
Well, I'll tell you this first. I know how people can fall in love with Justin Fields, the person. When I met him at the Bears Gala, his rookie year, went right up to him, and he was with his father, and he was very open and welcoming, and me and him talked. I told him I'm from Chicago, and I told him how this city can be his. We just need that quarterback, and I fell in love with the guy, just his personality, and so I was a big fan of him having success. But at the end of the day, I am a Bears fan. Grew up in Chicago, and obviously played for him. I feel that we need a guy like Caleb Williams. I got to dive a little more into the film. But what I've seen and what I've saw so far, I think he just gives us okay, so let me get right into it a little more deeper. That's what you want. Everybody can get a Patrick Mahomes comparison, right? And that's a hard one, but I think the mold of Pat Mahomes is, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud. You just look at this past playoffs and what you saw, those two guys who necessarily not, they're not runners, but they're mobile. They can give you the 15 yards scrambling, when things break down, and then also getting in the pocket, quick releases, spot passes, quick decisions. You saw how successful that was. Even CJ Stroud, the first year head coach, they didn't have all the pieces around him. He had that great success, not only just winning the playoff game, but during the regular season. And then how Jordan Love, got Green Bay on that hot streak towards the end. And seemingly Green Bay has their third quarterback. When you look at those type of quarterbacks, they kind of fit more of the mold of a Patrick Mahomes, So, and then I look at Justin Fields, and I say his comp, a lot of people say, Lamar Jackson, because they're runners, they're different players. But under the same mold where you have to build something around them, an offense that fits their needs. And obviously, absolutely, I don't think we did that. I don't think Luke Getsy did a good job at putting an offense around him. But at the same time, I think you got to look at the success rate of a RPO type of scheme. Lamar Jackson hasn't had the most success in the past years in the playoffs. He hasn't really. You look at some of his, it's like wild card done, divisional round done. This year, they won their first playoff game, divisional round, and then they get the conference championship, fall short. It's just that type of offense. I don't know if it gets you there. So let's look at the people who have got into the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts in that type of offense where they designed around, fell short. Cam Newton, who I think Justin Fields kind of, that's his, if that's a comp, that's his comp, Cam Newton. And I don't think he's nowhere close to Cam Newton, what Cam Newton did, but I think that's his comp. Cam, MVP that year, got to the Super Bowls, fell short. But also, this is my other caveat to it, Cam Newton started dipping down in his career because of injuries after that. When you got a guy who you use and run situations like that, injuries start piling up. In order to adjust in the last 2 years, he's been out. So you got to throw that into the equation too. So I think Luke Getsy didn't do his job But at the same time, let's look at Luke Gessie. He gets picked up. Obviously, he was the second choice at offensive coordinator, but he gets picked up. Now, let's go back to some of the things that in Luke Gessie's offense, he tried to make Justin fit. Still, Justin missed a lot of people open. I don't know if you saw that video. I posted a video in my podcast, and it was a strange one with the guys. It was St. Brown from Detroit, his brother, and DJ Moore talking on one of these platforms, video game platforms. And Aramis St. Brown was asking, like, why isn't Moody getting the ball? Like, I guess when he's watching film of a divisional opponent, he's seeing Mooney open all the time. And he's just like, he asked those guys, and they were like, he's like, hey, he's throwing it to you, number 2, but like he's not seeing Mooney's wide open. So I think there's times you see Justin not hitting those guys. Even at some point, you got to hit some guys. When they're open, they open, regardless of the offense you're running. So I just think there's a lot of different things. You look at 225-yard passers this season. Justin only, and it's a stat I had with all these guys throwing all these yards for 225 yards plus. Justin's only had 6 in his career. So that's something. This is a passing league at the end of the day. I know he's a special talent, but I think at some point as Bears fans, we have to take as Bears fans, Bears organization, we have to take our shot. What happened to taking our shots at quarterbacks? If it's not there, we talked about it. We've heard that in the past. We got on who's before polls, the general manager,
Ryan Pace.
Right, I want to forget his name almost. Pace. He talked about taking shots at these quarterbacks, which he never did.
Right.
I mean, we're in a situation, and here we are. I think everybody wants the haul. Everybody wants the big haul. I think Caleb Williams is the big haul. I think that is the haul.
And I'm inclined to agree that I think is the direction they're going, and it would be my decision if it was mine. Obviously, it's not. Now, a couple things you mentioned, the comparisons Caleb gets to Patrick Mahomes, which are obviously unfair. Patrick Mahomes is on a trajectory to be the greatest quarterback in NFL history, but at the same time, a guy that coached both Patrick Mahomes and Caleb Williams in Cliff Kingsbury, he's the one that said they are eerily similar. So while it is an unfair comparison, his coaches who work directly under both these guys made those comparisons. Now, your Cam Newton to Justin Fields comparison, I do think is a fair one as well. I think, even outside of the Lamar Jackson comp, I think the Cam Newton one is a little more appropriate. To your point, Cam Newton won MVP in his 5th year in the league. Yeah. So it took some time for Cam to get to that point. But at the same time, Cam Newton had a few 4,000-yard passing seasons leading up to that.
Right.
Where
I was going to throw that one in there. Right. He had some 4,000-yard passing years.
So Justin, and it isn't all his fault. Like Justin holds accountability for not even passing 3,000 yards, let alone 4,000. You mentioned Darnell Mooney's wide open. He's not getting the ball. I've been seeing a lot of discussion here about wide receivers, not getting the kind of production that, a good quarterback deserves. But at the same time, that production comes hand in hand from the quarterback. And a stat we threw out on the afternoon show this today at noon was, do you guys know the last wide receiver not named DJ Moore to score a touchdown for the Chicago Bears? I'll let you both take a guess.
Cole Kmet. Receiver, not a tight end?
Just wide receiver.
St. Brown.
How about you, Steve?
Either him or Chase Claypool, probably.
Do you got it, Steve?
Chase Claypool. That's you know what? It seems like a trick question.
Yeah. The answer is
I'm with you.
The answer is Chase Claypool, week 2, was the last wide receiver not named DJ Moore to score a touchdown for the Bears this year. Now, a lot of fans that are on Justin Fields' side go, see, he doesn't have enough help. Just DJ Moore. But the other side of the coin is, is Justin seeing the rest of the wide receivers? Darnell Mooney's had a year where he's had 1,200 yards receiving in the NFL. Chase Claypool, he was gone after 2 weeks, but he had successful seasons in the NFL. Even St. Brown and yes, of course they need to add talent at the wide receiver position, but to act like, oh, well, if they just had 4 great wide receivers, all 4 would, get great numbers. It doesn't work like that. Justin's got to be able to spread it around as well. It works hand in hand. Tyler Scott had 2 drops for touchdowns in the Atlanta game.
Yeah.
So those could have been 2, and then we wouldn't be talking about Chase Claypool at the end of the year. So it isn't all on Justin, but it isn't also all on the wide receivers as well, or Luke Getsy. They've all kind of played a hand in the deficiencies. Now I'll let Corey go at you, Steve, the way he's gone at me for 3 months.
Okay.
Hey, this is one-on-one pass rush, right? At this point.
Yeah.
I like but so you mentioned some quarterbacks, right? You mentioned CJ Stroud. You mentioned Patrick Mahomes, right? Those are guys that I think were put in the right system. And I think you could agree with this playing the game. Half the battle is all these guys coming out are talented. Do you not agree with that statement right there, right? It's about the system you're in there. Look at Patrick Mahomes. He got to sit behind Alex Smith, who came from San Francisco, was known as this game manager. He can't play. Colin Kaepernick's way better than him. He comes to Kansas City with Andy Reid, right, and is a 4-time Pro Bowler, is leading the league in completion percentage, passing yards, and all that. This was the same player that San Francisco got rid of and said he's no good. So that's the mark of a great coach. And you look at C.J. Stroud this year, Bobby Slowick, right? Who is he? A Kyle Shanahan disciple, right? Somebody that knows how to script for success for these guys. So when I look at Justin Fields, I'm looking at him like, man, he's got all the talent in the world. I think we can all agree with that, right? He's got a cannon of an arm. He does things that quarterbacks can't do. But he's been in the system with Matt Nagy and Luke Getsy that has done him a grave disservice. So when I look at it, and I look at Shane Waldron, right, the offensive coordinator that's now for the Bears, look what he was able to do with Geno Smith's career. And Geno Smith, when he came from the Jets, everyone said, oh, no, this guy cannot play at all, right? And I think we can all agree Justin Fields has a lot more talent, a lot more upside, and hasn't even come close to scratching the surface of what he can be. So when I'm looking at breaking down his film, right, and I look at the second half of the year, in particular that game you talked about, Braggs, the Atlanta game, I think that game for him was arguably the best game I think we've seen about
I agree.
Passing precision, throwing the ball on the money, quick release, timing. And this was a snowy day. Ball was wet. I mean, if Tyler Scott didn't have those drops, if DJ Moore didn't have those 1 drops, Justin Fields probably would have had 4 or 5 touchdowns and close to 400 yards passing in a game that, I mean, the weather was awful. So for me, I'm looking at his really good games, and I'm like, there definitely is a correlation between game plan and success. And obviously, some game plan is not going to be great, but you learn how to adapt. And when I look at what happened in the Super Bowl, right, I think everybody knew that Andy Reid and company were going to come back and win that game regardless of how bad they played, right? Because what does he do? He makes great adjustments. What is Kyle Shanahan shown in the big games? He can't make the big adjustments. During the regular season, he's king. But the mark of a good coach is when your team is not playing well. Because I think we could all agree that Patrick Mahomes in that game, in that first half, really in the whole first 4 quarters, really didn't play that well of a football game. But when it came down to it, they made some adjustments. They got things going, and they were able to win that game. So my thing is, when I look at the Bears, I look at the way they played the last 6-7 games of the season. And I think we can all agree that they were a playoff caliber team, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
With defense was playing lights out with some major pieces that they're going to address this year, right? Imagine adding another wide receiver and imagine some offensive line help and now a play caller that can script for success. That's my only thing is now you got a talented quarterback that has a play caller that's revived somebody's career that basically was out of the league at one point in time. They're like, this guy is going to be a career backup. So imagine what he can do with Justin Fields. Imagine trading back, getting all this value, being able to stack the team. I really do think people see the value in Justin Fields. They see the talent. It's different than Mitchell Trubisky. I think Bears fans get too skewed about what happened with Mitchell Trubisky. When he was gone, he was gone. There was no even debate about it. I think that's why this is a hard decision because Justin Fields is so talented. And I think everyone can say he hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can be. So it's about unlocking that potential. And I really do believe in the right system with a person that can get him the confidence, that can script for success and really be a mentor to him. Geno Smith threw for over 4,000 yards two years ago. This year, he should have threw for another 4,000 yards. He missed 2 games. So people say, oh, well, he didn't play as well this year. He was still on pace for over 4,000 yards. So that's what I'm just saying. Like, imagine what Shane Waldron can do with a guy like Justin Fields. There's other pieces to the puzzle. I think if they're a pass rusher and a defensive lineman away from being a dominant defense, I'm talking about a first in the league type of defense. And I think offensively, they got a great running game. You're going to run the football. You're going to work play action. And now you're a receiver away from being a dominant offense, I believe.
So, and I think we're all kind of step for step in that. And to your point, it's not just like Justin Fields versus Caleb. It's the trade back. It's the contract. There's a lot of different layers that go into the decision. It's not just one versus one. So that's kind of where we go with it. And you kind of set it up perfectly here, Woot. That was fun. I know that we set this show up as a talk about the trenches, and that's exactly what I want to get to, with two guys that played on, one guy on the offensive side of the ball, offensive line, and one guy in the defensive line. That's something where I really wanted to hone in on. But it was cool to see you two as former players be on both sides of this debate, because from what we've seen a lot here in the media and with the fans, it's very split down the middle. But for a lot of former players, we've seen a lot of people that are Team Justin, and it doesn't feel as heavily on 50-50 side of it when it comes to current players and former players saying they should move on from him. So, Steve, you brought a different
one more thing, Braggs, before we get into that, right? So
Yes,
let's bring up another quarterback, right? Tom Brady. If he's in any other place besides the Patriots, he is not the GOAT that we know now, right? And people talk about, is Patrick Mahomes better than Tom Brady was at this point in his career? 1,000%. And I don't think anybody would ever disagree about that. Okay. Tom Brady was a glorified game manager during those first couple absolutely. Super Bowls. And you've seen it, right? He had a great defense. They had a great scheme. They protected him. And then all of a sudden, as his career got on, then we started seeing confidence. We saw clutch moments. But early on, he was a glorified game manager, and that's no disrespect to him at any means. They ran a great system. They protected him. But that's my only thing is he was in a great system, right? The system was supposed to be for Drew Bledsoe, that had a cannon of an arm that could make every throw. That wasn't Tom Brady. What did a great coach do? He catered the system to him. Yep. And that's my point being, right? There's some guys in this league that can play in any system, right? Tom Brady towards the end of his career. Aaron Rodgers, I think he's a guy that's just that talented that can play in any system. Now Patrick Mahomes, right? He's kind of becoming that quarterback can play in any system. But I think majority of quarterbacks, 95% of quarterbacks, they have to be in a system that's catered to them and suits their strengths.
You see what I'm up against, Big Steve? This is what I'm up against. Woo.
And I got something.
You got it.
He's a Northwestern guy now. This is pretty intimidating. He's a Northwestern guy, Brought up good points. I think they bringing in a great coaching staff. I think as far as, I was on board with a limit. I wanted everybody gone. Okay. They kept Eberflus. I'm like, fine. Who are you going to bring in? I think the way they set it up, they brought in Waldron. He wasn't fired. The head coach was fired. And then who was Brown? That's the other coach. They're bringing in pass game coordinator who was also
from Carolina.
Right? Yeah, from Carolina. They work together. I think, now you have, I think if you wish that was Eberflus's first offensive coordinators and he brought in this is a dream setup. Brown is a guy who people say is a potential head coach. So these guys coming together and working, it's a perfect scenario for a player, a quarterback. Perfect scenario for maybe they've shown that they can revive a quarterback in Geno Smith, and also seems like a perfect scenario where you can bring in a rookie quarterback. But I'm gonna tell you this. Are these guys coming in to be like, hey, we want to fix somebody? Now, they're not going to give them that information. Maybe they will. I don't know if they would sign up for something that they didn't know they might be getting some young quarterback that might make them really look good. I don't know. I don't know if they're in it for another project. But I tell you this is a good thing about Justin Fields. I mean, I think all the potential you want to get the O-line fixed. And I don't even know if they were, if one of those tackles from Penn State, the guy from Notre Dame, if they dropped a 9, the way Poe's making it seem, he's set on Braxton Jones at left tackle. Like he feels like he's the guy. which I don't think so. I want one of those tackles. If we don't get a tackle at number 9, I would have been happy keeping Braxton Jones. He's got enough playing time. I think there's some growth there, but I think we could definitely upgrade there. Yeah, we need to get better at the O-line. We need a center. There's no brainer. I think, Tevin Jenkins injury is a concern. That's one of the concerns, but I think the biggest thing is moving him back to right guard, where I thought he had really good success, when he had to go over there because Nate Davis got injured. And I think Nate Davis was we got to give him another year, but he missed a lot of time with personal stuff. And then when he was on the field, he wasn't very, very productive. So obviously we need to add some things on that O-line, but you're never going to have a perfect scenario on the O-line. You know what I mean? So that's one of those things. Patrick Mahomes wasn't really working with a lot. And, as you can see on those tackles, they were struggling. But he's just a quarterback. I'm going to say this because I think when I was with the Bears, it was times we had really, really good O-lines. We had the infrastructure. We had the defense. And our O-line used to get bad rap. I played with 13 quarterbacks in 4 years. We got a bad rap. We can run the ball into 9-man boxes and all. We didn't care. We ran the ball. We just got a bad rap because, they can't pass protect. Well, we had 13 quarterbacks that patted the ball. They pat, as Olin we used to say. The common denominator was always the quarterback. You know what I mean? Now, obviously we didn't have a Justin Fields and who would he have been good in that situation, but I think you can always have the perfect scenario as a team, but the common denominator is always going to be that quarterback that can get you a Super Bowl, who can win you a Super Bowl, not just be a good team. Can you get that quarterback to win you a Super Bowl? And this is a good quote, and I thought it was funny. It was, it's kind of a joke. That guy on my show came on and said, he said, Justin Fields is kind of like Javi Baez. He's exciting to watch. He makes exciting plays, but he strikes out a lot. And it's not to say Justin's just throwing interceptions, but it's exciting. But it's just missing that complete component. That's what Javi Baez was just a discipline away from getting striking out all the time, from being a really all-around great player. And that's just kind of like what Justin, he brings that excitement, but he's just missing that component. Maybe you can get it with this new coaching staff, but I think you just got to take the hit. We got to look at what Caleb Williams is bringing to the table. I think there's some of the things you got to watch the guy and what he brings to the table, his ability to pass down the field, keeps his eyes down the field. He's got the ability to run. He's shown that. He's shown some exciting runs. Patrick Mahomes, forget all the run. Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs in rushing in the Super Bowl with 66 yards rushing.
Right.
I wish I would have put an alternate rushing yards on that for 40. It's just, I think it's a lot of ways to look at it. But at the end of the day, I just feel like you can still get a lot of things done as far as dressing the O-line. Getting a receiver, your guy from Washington may be there. O-lineman, left tackle might be there. Or if there's nobody there, you trade down because there might be some teams trying to move up. So I think you can still get what you want and draft your quarterback.
So
this is Braggs, real quick to counter his points, right? So when he said the quarterback is what makes the Super Bowl, right? That's what takes them to the promised land, right? So 07 and 11, right? Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback on earth, right? Who destroyed that game for him? The Giants defensive line.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The trenches, Von Miller, single-handedly, the MVP, Cam Newton, right? He single-handedly destroyed that game, right? And then we look at Cliff Averill and company and Legion of Boom, completely took out Peyton Manning because of that defense and the trenches. So I'm a firm believer on the offensive defensive lines, especially the defensive line. That's why San Francisco should have won that Super Bowl, right? Now, if Shanahan would have ran the football more behind that talented offensive line and allowed that defensive line to create havoc like they were, they should have won that game. But Braggs, yet again, like I say about Shanahan, always in the big games, right? Atlanta in 2016, we're up 3 scores. Let's pass the ball. No, in that game, I think we could all agree, right? San Francisco controlled those trenches. And if you're an offensive lineman, right, you're in that situation with Shanahan and company. You're like, hey, let's keep running the ball. Let's keep running. We're manhandling them. We're driving them down the field. I just didn't understand at that point. So San Francisco should have won that game if they would have just ran the football and relied on the trenches. So my point being is that the trenches, I think, right, you have to have a quarterback that can make plays. Don't get me wrong. But Eli Manning, what he did in both of those Super Bowls, especially the one, got a lucky helmet hat catch. But other than that, right, I mean, his game wasn't out of this world or anything. Oh. The defense won those games, and the trenches, his offensive line, controlled the run game and all that. So I'm a firm believer in, yes, you have to have a quarterback that can play, but the trenches, a team that has dominant trenches, that is the recipe. Like when you can run the football down somebody's face, and then defensively, you can get in the backfield, you can cause pressure, you can cause errant throws. That's the recipe for me. So I'm looking at the Bears, like I said before. They're a defensive end, a defensive tackle away from being.
But why can't we address that and get the quarterback where we still in a great position if you trade Justin Fields as well? I mean, it's drumming up where there's going to be a few teams buying from him.
And I agree with you, Steve. I do think both can still be accomplished. Obviously, if you keep Fields and you trade back a Hall, that's going to give you equity for 3 more years. But if you want to just talk about what they can build this year, if you opt to draft Caleb and you trade Fields, there's a lot they can have. They have the 3rd most cash to spend in salary cap heading into free agency, which is essentially 3 weeks away from today. You have the number 1 and the number 9 pick, and then depending on what you can get for Fields, you'll have that draft equity, coming up this year. So let's just get into the meat and potatoes of it. That was a lot of fun watching you two go back and forth on this debate because, fans can go all day, media can go all day, but for a lot of people, we're going to respect and value your guys' opinion the most because you guys were in it. Steve, you were blocking for 13 different quarterbacks. Woot, you were running down 13 different quarterbacks, and you killed one of them named Brett Favre, and we loved it. And we will forever love you for that.
We all silly like the mayor.